Hey, what's up, guys? Look at this. Camp of the Saints. Now, I had read this book maybe like 8 years ago when I pretty much became fully red pilled or dissident. And they were always mentioning this novel, this dystopian futuristic novel about an immigrant invasion of France, written by Jean Raspail. I got a copy. The old original copy was actually so old that it split in half, and I had to wrap a rubber band around it. Despite the French author and the being translated, it was a very easy read and a dense read. Very talented writer. Camp of the Saints is highly recommended, and this reprint was done in reaction to what happened in 2015. All my European people, you remember 2015, right? When the country I found myself born in, amongst other great allies, decided to instigate a regime change war in Syria, like it had done in other places, and the violence had caused a refugee rush towards Europe, uh, first through Greece and then into Germany, my mother's people's homeland, and not just people from that region. The entire Middle East came in, and so this had been reprinted because of that. Because a lot of people were mentioning this book again. This book has been reprinted many times, and it's infamous. I'm going to cover the story a little bit. There's some scenes I'll mention I like, but this is a really good addition. I like it because it's kind of like it reminds me of like the DVD. Remember that when DVDs were a big thing, you had all these extras on the DVDs, and here you have a bunch of extras. You have all the notes. You have the different edition prologues from the writer himself, and then you have the novel, which is about 300 plus pages. Then you have afterwards. You have essays. You have a very interesting listening to the reaction this book had when it was translated into English. So, but I'll delve into it a little bit. But I just wanted to go over this. What is this? The second I saw this, I recognized this right away. This is an incident that happened in New York, I think in '92 or '91, that I remember clearly. I remember this photo, and I remember when it happened. This is the Golden Venture, a ship that was smuggling Chinese immigrants into America. The ship ran aground. Some of the Chinese people actually drowned on it, okay, and a lot of them jumped in the water and swam to shore, surprising beachgoers, and it was freezing cold, hence the blankets. I just remember it was an interesting event that had happened. The smuggling of Chinese people into America from snakeheads, basically organized crime, and the life these people lived and led, the violence used against him. Now, of course, my view of America as a plantation from its very inception, okay, informed by Mr. James LaFond, there's nothing really out of the ordinary about this, okay? But in the context of the book that this is referring to, the nautical thing and masses of people on a beach, well, that refers to what happens in the book. So what can I say? I'll just look at the. I'm not going to really. It's a lot of reading. It's densely packed together. I'll just talk about the story basically in the unspecified future. Um, Millions and millions of people from India follow a religious leader. They hijack a bunch of ships, I think 100 of them, and they decided that they're going to land in southern France, right, in the Mediterranean, and they are going to just go ashore and just take over millions and millions of people. And the whole book is about the period of time when they travel and when they land. What's going on? It's a satire, just like 1984 was a satire, just like all the dystopians are satires. Fahrenheit 451, Brave New World, Atlas Shrugged. They are the best dystopians are satires and have humor in it. Yes, there is humor in 1984 if you can look for it. And there is dark humor in this book as well. There's a lot of funny scenes in it. Jean Raspail is definitely someone you would call a pessimist, cynic, traditionalist, which is really what you're going to be. Um, if you are someone of this persuasion, like I would assume I am. Um, the novel is kind of it's interesting as the ships travel to France. There's opportunities for this flotilla to be diverted, and every single time something crazy happens, almost like fate, to continue the flotilla towards France. And the inability of the people in France, from the government to the media to the regular people to the characters it focuses on, uh, nobody really wants this to happen except for the left, and of course the many uh, people of a certain religion that was moving to France from the other side of the Mediterranean. They seem to be all for it, and eventually the ships land and they come out, and there's a it's almost like a zombie apocalypse essentially. Anyway, um, some of the cool scenes. The opening scene is great when a young radical leftist breaks into some guy's house. I believe he's a professor, and harangues him about all the things that leftists were haranguing people about back then. And the way the professor rebuts this young leftist man who is happy that the bourgeois world, which I don't think much of the bourgeois world, but he's happy that the world of Europe is going to change when these people land, and they are all his brothers. And the way the professor rebuts this young man, both verbally and otherwise, is a very satisfying scene. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, I want you guys to read this. There's also a lot of other interesting scenes. The scenes when they come on ashore, and their supporters rush to meet the millions of people just marching onto the beach and into the interior. The scenes with the Catholic priests who go to help. These are very funny, dark, funny scenes of basically what happens when millions of people that don't give a damn about you just keep walking uh, through you, over you, on top of you. There's a funny scenes with the military where half the military guys can't bring themselves to even shoot their weapons. There's a funny character. There's an Indian doctor who lives in France who joins the ragtag would-be resistance fighters, and they're all surprised that this man wants to help his adopted European homeland. And he explains to them in a very simple way why he's doing that. And also, it shows in the rest of the world too, in America, in Russia, all over. The white world is under siege. So I'll cover some of the intro stuff here. Some things that are interesting. Notes from the publisher. Right, the 1984 of the 21st century. Essentially, the Camp of the Saints probably nailed how things are really happening more than a lot of these other books have. But you pretty much put them all together. This is a big thing that Raspal mentions. It's always the soul that wins the decisive battles. Yeah, I like here in author's introduction to the 85 edition. It's always later than you think. Okay, yes it is. And here we go. I'll read this little part here. At every level, nations, races, cultures, as well as individuals, it is always the soul that wins the decisive battles. It is only the soul that forms the weave of gold and brass from which the shields that save the strong are fashioned. I can hardly discern any soul in us. And he starts talking about France and what's going on. There's a bit of melancholy here, but I'm telling you, it is funny. It is funny. And of course, this thing here, Christian charity will prove itself powerless. The times will be cruel. So we'll go over some of the, I like this. They got apocalypse. Okay, and they went up over the breadth of the earth and encompassed the camp of the saints and the beloved city. Gog and Magog. I haven't heard that in a while. My spirit turns more towards the west, towards the old heritage. There are perhaps some treasures to retrieve among its ruins. I don't know. And I have no idea who Lawrence Durrell is, but that is a very, poetic little thing. And of course, our man Solzhenitsyn, as seen from the outside, the massive upheaval in Western society is approaching the limit beyond which it will become metastable and must collapse. Solzhenitsyn, they all loved him when he was a dissident against the Soviet Union, but they didn't like him so much when he started saying other things. What those things are, I'll leave you to find out. So I know it's like you gotta do a report, your own research. Now I'll go to the end here. Oh wait, I like this little thing. He did something, a little preface. Only 900 million of the 7 billion people will be white. Okay, white. Excuse me. I'm gonna make that video about why I don't like the term white, but you know how that goes. So we go through the novel. It's funny too how the would-be resistance fighters who actually takes, well, anyway, how they actually meet their destiny and who is the agent of that is actually very accurate. So I'll just get here. A lot of this afterward stuff is him going over the years of when he published it, when he wrote this, his views on it, and his views only became more and more confirmed. So every couple of decades, people would return to Jean Raspail's work, thinking maybe he changed his mind, maybe he did something really, maybe he would renounce what he did, and he only was more and more convinced that what he did was really, worthwhile, and that's great. It drives the critics nuts that he does that. And he talks about writing the novel, how he had to make it Indians and not from people a little closer from North Africa, which is the real issue going on in France. Because even back in the 70s, there was a lot of controversy, a lot of not just leftists, but the neoliberal line, which is even more powerful. And so he had problems even back then. And there's something here that he writes, and this is one of the things he wrote here that really gets me. Probably the most striking thing. The almost sepulchral silence of the media, governments, and the community institutions on the demographic crash of the European Union is one of the more striking phenomena of our time. Okay. When there's a birth in my family or in the homes of my friends, I cannot look at this baby of our house without reflecting upon that which prepares itself for him in the negligent governments and what he must confront in his manhood. Okay, he's pretty much laying it out right there. The world that some of us are going to be older men in, and some younger people who are worth a damn. This is the world that we're going into. Anyway, just real brief, I'll go over it. When this came out, this drove people nuts. This drove people absolutely nuts. There was a lot of people speaking out against it. Okay, let's see. They actually have a really cool thing in here. They actually have the emergence of a classic. I want to go over this real quick. Forget Jaws and the Towering Inferno. Dating itself pretty good. This is the ultimate disaster novel from an ad in the New York Times. Well, you can imagine, okay, in the New York Times, this thing was not well liked, and they go over many of the people that did not like this book and vehemently attacked it. Let's see, the title, Poor White Trash. There you go. New York Times found the book so offensive, they published 2 attacks on it. Richard Lingemann, okay, didn't like it. And of course, Mr. Lask here didn't like it. Okay, racist diatribe. Now, this is back in the 70s. I keep telling you that this SJW leftist stuff, it's not new. Okay, and more. The Soviet Tenenbaum didn't like it either. Fascist fantasy, disgusting book. Long Island Newsday. I remember Newsday. That shit's gone now. Good riddance. Jerry Built Nightmare. What does that mean? Anyway, so you have all the people talking about it. Yeah. Okay, Tampa Bay opined, of course the world faces a great problem in feeding population, but I personally don't think we're going to face a racial apocalypse. What do I keep telling you about all the stuff I heard all my life? All the big people that you have forgotten who had the mic back then, everything they told you was wrong. And there's another combination of Jaws and Brave New World. That's interesting. Anyway, Camp of the Saints. Read it. It's great. And it's funny. Don't be depressed. And there it is, The Golden Venture. Don't be depressed. Read it later.